our state a couple years ago passed something called the Keeping Families Together Act, and it essentially made it more difficult for a judge, had a higher bar for a judge to remove a child from a home where there was active substance abuse. The idea being we want to keep families together. Now, in the years since that passed, it has been a train wreck, and the numbers bear that out. More kids are either dying or being exposed to substances in the home or dying as a result of their parent who is addicted to substances. So the Keeping Families Together Act is a failure by any measurable standard. So this past legislative session, there were a couple dueling efforts to try to fix it. And I'll give Republicans and Democrats a little credit, although a Republican version of this bill put forth by State Representative Travis Couture would have strengthened the law quite a bit in favor of kids and said, yeah, it's imminent. You're posing an imminent risk of harm to your child by doing fentanyl or other dangerous drugs in their presence, as if that's some sort of like fringe belief. It's not. So Democrats took his bill, they watered it down a little bit and passed a bill that gives judges a little more leeway to say, yeah, that you're posing a danger to your child. We're going to remove them until you're clean and sober. So anyway, it was really disappointing to see where that bill ended up. I was glad there was some sort of positive change in the right direction. It clearly wasn't strong enough. And now we're hearing about this horrible story that really is something that as a state, we should have been able to prevent. This from Como News. Mother of Everett 4-year-old found dead along I-5 is in Pierce County is arrested for murder. So you probably were watching this story develop because at first it was a missing boy, a missing 4-year-old Ariel Garcia. And then the boy's body was found. And then news was starting to come out that his mother, the family knew, police knew, the state knew that his mom was having substance abuse issues, that there were concerns that she could be a danger to the child, and now Ariel is dead. This from Como News. Ariel's grandmother told a court earlier this week that she had immediate concerns about his safety while under his mother's care, according to court records. The grandmother, who Como News is not naming, filed a petition for guardianship of Ariel Garcia on Monday, 2 days before he disappeared. Quote, this is from the court filing from the grandmother. She said, while she, the mother, is on drugs, she is not capable of parenting. Her want for drugs and alcohol makes her leave for days at a time without notice. Luckily, since they live with me, I can step in when this happens. Her behavior has become very violent and unpredictable. So that's the grandmother, days before this little boy went missing, pleading with the court, give me full custody. Help me pry this child from his mother. This is the grandmother. Worried, she's doing drugs, she's doing alcohol, she leaves for days at a time. Her behavior is unpredictable, it's violent. According to Everett police, Garcia's body was then found along I-5 in Pierce County Thursday night. He was last seen in Everett on Wednesday, and there had been an ongoing search for 2 days. So here you have a situation where, and this petition to the court was not the first time that the state was aware of the issues in this household and perhaps some of the dangers posed to little Ariel Garcia. So the grandmother's so concerned, she wants emergency custody. It didn't come in time. So this, of course, reminded a lot of us of what we were fighting for during the legislative session. And I would say what Representative Travis Couture, a Republican from Allen in particular, fought for. He came on the show more emotional than I'd ever seen him, talking about his frustration that the legislature wouldn't do more to get kids out of the homes of drug-addicted parents. So he sent out a tweet saying Garcia, of the mother, is now charged with murder 1 and 2 and assault of a child, no bail. Says the grandmother had won emergency guardianship the day prior. He says, if we had a law making hard drug abuse an imminent harm like I had proposed, the little boy could have been removed sooner and might still be alive. So Representative Couture was kind enough to come on the show today and react, obviously, to this tragedy and to what more the state could have done and perhaps should be doing in the future. Can you say that the bill that you were trying to put forth would have prevented something like this?
Yeah, I think so. Because as I think you do a little digging, you find out that that mother of that little boy was already involved with CPS beforehand and was on drugs. And the court did grant, an emergency order put guardianship with the grandmother, but it was a day too late. And unfortunately, and this is kind of how these things go oftentimes. Unfortunately, in this case, the child was murdered, which is sick. And but I do believe that if we had a law in place with a strong imminent harm to remove kids, that child probably would have been removed, or at least placed with the grandmother long before.
Yeah, and I think something the grandmother had written in her petition, because it was, again, the grandmother who knew little Ariel was in danger, petitioned to get custody. And one of the things she wrote in the petition was of the mother, while she's on drugs, her behavior is unpredictable, and I'm scared she will harm him in the process. And that just seems like common sense. When someone's on drugs, their behavior is unpredictable, and they can't care for a child.
Yeah, one of the things that especially the Democrats focused on, and of course it is a big problem, is the accidental ingestion and overdose of drugs, especially fentanyl,
Yeah.
right? But there's other cases as well. I talked to, I think, with you a while back about a little over a year ago, where a mother who was on in CPS supervision was abusing meth and murdered her 3-year-old son. And it's similar to this, and it's not just fentanyl, it's meth and it's other drugs as well, although fentanyl is the biggest problem. And it's not just accidental ingestion or overdose. Sometimes there's violent erratic behaviors. And if you're using meth, or if you're using fentanyl or some other hard drug, you've abandoned any hope of making sane decisions for yourself or for your child. And oftentimes, they're just looking for that next hit. That's the only thing they care about, sadly. And we want to be able to get those people some help. But we first have to take the keys away. We have to take the keys away from those parents so that we can get the parents better and we can make the child safe. How is that radical? I don't know. I don't know why that's so hard for the state or for the majority party in our state to want to do that. I think that we passed a bill that just didn't go far enough, but I'm praying that I'm wrong and it does something. But I just don't think it will. It just basically says, "Hey, judge, give great weight to what's going on in these circumstances and think about it really hard." And one last thing, Brandi, we had like in 2022, and it's going to be worse for 23, but the most recent data, almost 3,000 drug deaths in our state. That's like 12 plane crashes a year. That's like 70 Oso landslides. That's more people than were killed in action in Afghanistan for Operation Enduring Freedom. That's like killing the population of all of McCord Air Force Base or Port Ludlow. I mean, it's just nuts. We have to be able to do something. My seatmate, Dan Griffey, we went to a fentanyl press conference and we said, "Hey, Governor, why aren't you declaring a state of emergency over fentanyl?" And they just kind of laughed at us and didn't do anything. But it's like that's more deaths than we should ever accept. And this garbage, this junk is being peddled into our state. And we have to do something about it. They almost defunded all of our drug task forces. We can't do anything about gang or juvenile activity who are there using the kids to sell the drugs. And it's just nuts.
Yeah, it's a total system failure. And you mentioned something that's really important. People want to act like, and Democrats said all of a sudden, they cared about parental rights and, oh, we can't strip these parents of their rights, even though they're using fentanyl and all this stuff. But you said something important. It's not just about protecting the kid. It's about giving that parent an opportunity to get better so they can get their kid back. And I don't understand why people can't see that and can't appreciate that. Maybe that's the motivation a mom would need to be able to get clean and sober to get their child back. Now you have a situation where a 4-year-old's dead and the mom's probably going to spend the rest of her life in prison. How is that keeping families together? It's not. It's just insane. You mentioned the law that Democrats were willing to pass this session, which was a watered-down version of what you wanted. As you articulated, you wanted imminent harm. Now a judge is giving great weight to whether drug use around children is enough to warrant their removal from the home. Before this session, we already knew that there was this stunning uptick in the number of kids who were, who either died or were seriously hurt from drugs in the home. And Democrats still weren't willing to go with this stronger version. So do you think that a horrible incident like this would even change their calculations?
No. And part of the reason is it's not really about parental rights. I mean,
Yeah.
that's convenient for them to say that it's about parental rights, but it's not. It's about a radical ideology around drugs. It's about the furthest pendulum swing from the war on drugs that you can get, and it's about equity. It's about not removing kids from people who may be more disproportionately impacted for removal of kids or for drugs. But does it really matter, Brandi, what color somebody is if they're dead? And what about the kids? Don't they deserve a second chance at life? And isn't it more equitable to allow kids who are more disproportionately impacted, who may be minorities, a second chance at life?
Yeah.
So we're going to leave, hold on a second, we're going to leave the kids who are minorities in the drug homes so they can die. And that doesn't make any sense. That's nuts.
It's
It's nuts. It's
certifiable.
radical. And so it's not really about parental rights, although they kind of couched it in that argument. But I mean, we're talking about the same people who passed 5599. I mean, so it's not about parental rights at all. And you could kind of see the flip flop between the long session and this last short session on the argument between 5599 and things like the bill that we pay. It's just incredible how they could spin it that way. But to me, it's just like a dogmatic belief where someone will choose a radical ideology, their ideology, over the death of a child. And to me, that's what makes me sick.
Yeah. Yeah. Protecting drug users over innocent lives. And you make such a great point about, in the name of equity, and now you have a 4-year-old little Hispanic boy who's dead. Is that equitable to them? I don't get it. Travis Couture, I know you'll keep fighting to try to improve that law and protect kids, as every single public servant should, but for some reason isn't. So thank you for being here.
Thanks, Brandi.
Yeah. If you're not sick, you're not paying attention. If you're not angry, you're not paying attention. If you're not motivated to take action, you're not paying attention. We have so many crises in this state that are going unaddressed, that are being made worse by a single political party that has no check on their power, and that refuses to acknowledge when it makes mistakes. You know, the Keeping Families Together Act was passed on a bipartisan basis a couple years ago. So there's plenty of blame to go around. You know, some Republicans have since said that they felt as if they were sold a bill of goods that wasn't really true, and that it's the way that DCYF has chosen to interpret that law that has led down this path. But whatever it is, at least Republicans could come back 2 years later and say, this didn't work, let's fix it. Let's fix it, and let's do it now because kids are dying. So to me, I tend to be more forgiving, obviously, when lawmakers acknowledge the error of their ways and are willing to come back and fix things. But this has not been fixed, certainly to the standard that reasonable people would expect that it should. If you're addicted to drugs like fentanyl, have you ever seen someone on fentanyl? Have you been down to 3rd Avenue? You think that fentanyl use looks different in a home than it does on 3rd Avenue, where they're folded in half, where their skin, their flesh is being eaten away, where they can't even take care of themselves, let alone a child? That's what fentanyl abuse looks like in a home, too. Just because you're doing it under a roof doesn't make it any different. And it is certainly dangerous to any child that's in that setting.